Yeah, are we ready to get started?
Yes, we're ready.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all to this very important meeting today, Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, being held in the Microsoft Teams platform via video conference. Please note, this meeting will be recorded and feature public comment. Commissioners are asked to mute their microphones when they're not speaking and to verbally identify yourself prior to making comment. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, this is Regina Jackson, Planning and Zoning Coordinator. I will now confirm that all members of the Planning Commission are present and can hear me by calling the roll. Commissioners, when I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams?
Present.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Here.
Commissioner Thaxton?
Here.
Commissioner G? Commissioner Coleman?
Here.
Commissioner Page?
Here.
5 members of the Planning Commission are present. This public meeting of Planning Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Northam's March the 12th, 2020 executive order due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth given the outbreak of COVID-19. A quorum of the commission is not physically present in the meeting location, but members have joined remotely. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the city's planning department webpage with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will be recorded and feature public comment. Even if members of the public do not provide comment, participants are advised that people may be listening who do not provide comment, and those persons are not required to identify themselves. For this meeting, Planning Commission is convening by video conference via Microsoft Teams app as posted on the city's website, identifying how the public may join.
Commissioners, before you are the minutes of the November 17th, 2020 public hearing. Do any commissioners have any corrections or changes to the minutes? If so, please state your name before stating the changes. If there aren't any changes, we're in need of a motion to approve the minutes and a second. Commissioners are asked to mute your microphone when you're not speaking and to verbally identify yourself prior to speaking.
Mr. Commissioner, this is Mr. Page. I make a motion that we approve the minutes as posted.
Commissioners, we have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Peter Youngblood. I second that motion.
Madam Secretary, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the November the 17th, 2020. Commissioners, as I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Page?
Yes.
The minutes are approved by a vote of 5-0. Announcements of future meetings and conferences. Please note that our next scheduled public hearing is Tuesday, January the 5th, 2021 at 1:30 p.m. The public hearing will be held in the Microsoft Teams platform via video conference. Items reviewed today will be presented to City Council for action at their February the 9th or February the 23rd virtual meeting, or as otherwise noted. We also ask that you mute your microphones when you're not speaking and to verbally identify yourself prior to making comments. Before we begin our public hearing, we will now have a presentation on the Portsmouth Citywide Housing Plan by Mr. Brian Sweats, Manager of Comprehensive and Strategic Planning.
Good afternoon, everyone. You all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I just got a warning that I have bad network quality, so if something comes up, someone put it in the chat or something so I can see it, if you don't mind. And you can all see my screen as well, right? Okay, so I'm going to be presenting you a summary of the city's strategic housing plan. This was our plan that was finished back in June. I'm going to walk you through why we decided to write the plan. We're going to look at the vision that the plan created, and then we're going to talk about the goals and strategies to try to help make that a reality. If you have questions, please feel free to let me know while we go through this. This is designed for you all, not for me, so I would rather focus on what you all are interested in. So don't feel bad if you want to interrupt. It's okay. Okay. So I'm going to start with a couple of slides about why we decided to do the housing plan. The first, as you can see here, is that Portsmouth has, at least by median year built, the oldest housing in Hampton Roads. Our housing also tends to be small and tends to have lower home values. And so this clearly doesn't bring us in a lot of tax revenue, and that's something that we would like to be able to fix. One, for the revenue, two, to try to attract more people. Also, we know that we have a hard time keeping Portsmouth residents in their homes. The bar graph on the top looks at what's called a housing cost, which is when a person spends 30% or more of their monthly income on housing costs. And that's not just your rent and your mortgage, but it also includes things like utilities. If you are spending over 50% of your income on housing costs, then you're referred to as extremely housing cost burden. And you can see that we're looking at, 12,000 or so residents of Portsmouth who are facing these problems. We also have a hard time keeping people in their homes. For whatever reason, Portsmouth eviction rate is significantly higher, 50% higher than any other city in Hampton Roads. So we want to figure out how can we do a better job of helping people to stay in their homes. We also know that our population is projected to decline over the next 5 to 10 years. Rates and amounts vary depending on who is doing the analysis, but anywhere on this graph here that's not in blue is essentially census tracts where we're expecting that population will be declining. On the other hand, there are positives that we think that need to be focused on as well. We have, at least since 2014, the highest average square foot of rent cost in Hampton Roads, while we also have the lowest vacancy rate. So this seems to tell us that it would be profitable for developers to invest in Portsmouth. We need to figure out how we can do a better job of encouraging them to do that. So that's the why. Once we got into, yes.
That was based on 2014, correct?
No, this is since 2014. So this analysis was done in 2019. So this was looking at everything that had been built in the previous 5 years.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Okay, so that's the kind of why we want to do that. And once we got into writing the plan, we want to start with the creation of a vision statement. And you can see it here on your screen. I want to unpack it a little bit because there's a lot that we would like to focus on here. An equitable housing market that attracts new residents and retains existing residents by offering a variety of choices and amenities and by creating livable and desirable neighborhoods. So first and most important is the focus on equity. This is supposed to be a plan for all Portsmouth residents. This is not about trying to find money so that we can level old neighborhoods, displace the people who live there, build new subdivisions, and bring in new people to live. This is supposed to be something where we're looking to help both our existing residents and to attract new residents to move into the city. This is supposed to be for all. We do that by offering a variety of choices and amenities, but also by realizing that housing is not separate from the communities that the housing is within. So we need to do a better job of creating livable and desirable neighborhoods. To do that, we identified 4 goals, And what we're going to spend the rest of the presentation on is looking at each of the goals and the strategies to try to make those goals a reality. The 4 goals, as you can see here: incentivizing catalytic downtown development, reinvesting in our neighborhoods, providing options for senior housing, and deconcentrating poverty. Like I said, we'll go through those one at a time. Starting with incentivizing catalytic downtown development. What we mean by this is that we know that when the city invests money in the downtown area, it brings back a positive rate of return. This is, while we are, yes, technically spending money, we're making money on these investments. And so we need to figure out how we can do a better job of that and to do more of it to try to encourage more downtown development. 4 strategies that we identified for this are to market properties for redevelopment. I should probably say better market properties for redevelopment, by building transparency into the redevelopment process, by investing in shared infrastructure, and by reforming our land use and development processes. First, when we're talking about marketing properties for redevelopment, this is a map of the broader downtown area, and all of these parcels that you see in this kind of orange reddish color are owned by the city of Portsmouth or some entity connected there too. So that could include PRHA, it could include the EDA. They're not necessarily controlled by the city, but an entity that has connections to the city. Also, this doesn't mean that all of these parcels are parcels that we could get rid of. Some of these are going to have things like a school or a pump station or PRHA housing or city offices or what have you. But the point is to show that there is an incredible amount of property that the city owns that we should be trying to get back into private hands for redevelopment. In order to do that, we need to look at how we want to get rid of the properties and how much the city wants to be involved in, and that's where the 4 boxes along the bottom underneath where it says partnership structures for redevelopment come in. What the city has tended to do so far is to find ways to sell the property off to a developer. That has the least risk for the city in that we are in no way responsible for the redevelopment of those properties, and we get our cash for the sale up front. However, if we look at some of these other options as you move left across this continuum, the more that the city retains some measure of control, the greater risk for the city, but also the greater potential for reward, especially in terms of being able to better control for trying to create and achieve the visions that we've identified in this housing plan, as opposed to focusing solely on profit. Along those lines, we need to do a better job of building transparency into the redevelopment process. This was a headline from the Virginian pilot from a couple years ago. For those of you who remember following when Armando Hoffler had put in an unsolicited bid to build a new city hall, this had the potential to be a great thing for the city. Instead, we end up with another embarrassing headline. And these are the types of situations that we need to try to avoid. We need to create better internal processes with a clearer long-term vision for what we're trying to achieve so that we can work with developers instead of antagonizing them. Third, we need to also keep investing in shared infrastructure. This is a picture or an illustration of the proposed stormwater park on the Water Street parking lot behind the jail. The city is, I want to say, at 30% design for the project at this point, so we're moving forward. But this is a perfect example of a project that has benefits for everyone. The city gets a benefit from this because it helps to reduce our flooding in the downtown area. It serves as an amenity for people who live downtown in places like the new Harbor Vista apartments or in some of the new Dan Aston buildings a little bit farther away. One thing that we hear from people, especially young people who tend to move into urban apartments, is looking for places to congregate or to walk their dog. This is a perfect place for them to do that. But also this functions as a stormwater BMP, meaning that if a developer comes in, like, I don't know, Breeden wanting to build phase 2 of Harbor Vista, they don't actually have to worry about figuring out how to treat stormwater on their parcel because we have already done this for them. This stormwater park will function as a BMP for part of the downtown watershed, which alleviates the need for developers to try to find a way to build a pond or some other way of capturing stormwater on small parcels that would be better served by putting up more buildings. And finally, the kind of ubiquitous process of looking for ways to reform how we process land use and development applications. Your mileage may vary on this, on how good or bad of a job that we're currently doing, but we can always probably do a little bit better. One example of how we can do this is something Julie talked about in her last presentation on the zoning ordinance, where we'll be looking at eliminating the need for use permit applications for multifamily development in the downtown area. Again, to try to eliminate uncertainty from the development process for developers, so they can have an easier time building more units downtown. Our ultimate goal here is, through the housing plan at least, is to get more residents downtown. The more people there are, the more that they shop and that they spend, and that they support our local businesses and encourage more businesses to grow. When you start doing that, you start building a sense of place, a sense of culture that people like and they respond to, which encourages more people to move in, which again puts more money into the local economy. And so by building more units, we're hoping that we can support our existing small businesses in downtown Portsmouth. Any questions before I move on to the next goal? Okay. So neighborhood reinvestment. We know that the city doesn't have the money to just wholesale go into neighborhoods and fix all of the problems that may exist. We need to find ways that we can work with our neighborhoods so that the total becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And we have 4 strategies that we think that could help us do this: building community partnerships, providing funding for owner-occupied rehabilitation of housing, incentivizing infill development and renovations, and then revising the city's tax exemption program. First, building community partnerships. This could be the city working with local civic leagues. It could be working with larger nonprofits like 4Kids, or national nonprofits like Habitat for Humanity. But we need to find people on the ground that we can work with that can contribute, because the city can't do all of the work by itself. It needs to be a true partnership with the community. Second, we need to provide more funding for owner-occupied rehabs. This is a common theme in our housing issues, is that the city doesn't have a lot of green space that we can just go in and build new neighborhoods. This isn't, Chesapeake or Suffolk, where they have a seemingly unlimited amount of land that they can just keep sprawling into and building more neighborhoods. We don't have that option. So we have to help people who do live here fix up their houses so that they can stay in one spot and they can increase their property values. By extension, we know that infill is going to be a place that we see a lot of our new development, but we also know that we don't want housing that looks like this. What we heard during the comp plan public outreach meetings was that people liked their neighborhoods. They wanted them to stay more or less the same, to maintain that sense of place. So while we want to encourage new development in the city, we also want to encourage development that fits with the existing character of the neighborhood, not that just puts in any old house. And finally, the city has a tax exemption program run through the city assessor's office. The city assessor had put forth, 6 months ago, maybe at this point, options for improving the program. They've kind of gotten lost in the shuffle at this point, but those proposed changes are still out there, and the city assessor and I myself as well believe that it could be very valuable with helping people by encouraging them and incentivizing them to rehabilitate and renovate their houses. Our third goal is to provide options for senior housing. We want to be able to provide technical assistance to allow seniors to age in place. We want to include seniors in owner-occupied rehabilitation programs, and we want to consider that senior housing and public land disposition is a worthwhile goal. First, technical assistance for aging in place. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of considerations for seniors when trying to decide if they want to stay in their place or if they want to downsize into somewhere smaller, which may or may not keep them in the community, in the neighborhood, or in the city that they've been living in. And so there's multiple opportunities for us to provide programs and education for seniors to help them figure out the best way to be able to stay in their homes long term. Some of that is through owner-occupied rehab programs, where you can help seniors renovate the interior of their house so it becomes more livable. Things like changing the heights of electrical sockets and cabinets, widening hallways and doorways to fit things like wheelchairs. There's any manner of things that we would like to be able to help people do to allow their homes to maintain that livability factor. And finally, our downtown is a perfect example of a small walkable community that would be a great place for seniors to live. We want to make sure if we're selling off land in the downtown area that we give consideration to the idea of potential senior housing in that area, because it's a place that would encourage seniors to be up and out, to be active, to stay part and a part of their community. It's a way to help keep people engaged and motivated as opposed to spending more and more time at home. Our final goal in the housing plan is an effort to deconcentrate poverty. The idea of the city or a public housing entity building large numbers of low-income housing units all in the same place is starting to fall out of fashion. And so we need to figure out how can we help both the people who live in existing PRHA housing to find potentially better housing, but also people who fall into PRHA or public housing. How can we help them to find other places to live as well? And we have 4 strategies for doing that: developing short-term rental assistance, supporting mixed income development, establishing a moving to opportunity program, and creating additional pathways to ownership for PRHA residents. First is short-term rental assistance. You all probably have seen headlines talking about the problems that people are facing with rent and mortgage payments during COVID crisis, as we've seen unprecedented unemployment. What's important to remember is that the rent moratoriums have not canceled rents and mortgage payments, they've just delayed them. So people who haven't been paying their rent or their mortgage have not been saving money, they've just been building up more and more debt. And that bill is eventually going to come due. The city is working with federal funding through the CARES Act to provide assistance for rents, for mortgages, for utilities, but it's not enough. Currently, the city has they processed about $640,000 worth of rent and mortgage assistance requests, and we've paid out a little more than $300,000. We've also processed almost $120,000 worth of utility assistance applications, and we've paid out almost $100,000. We are still working on that, but that's clearly nowhere near what it's going to take to help people when the moratoriums eventually expire and people are looking at significant amounts of back rent or back mortgage that needs to be paid. Not doing anything is going to lead to a potentially massive housing crisis where thousands, if not tens of thousands of people could be evicted from their homes, which could lead to a huge homeless crisis. These are types of problems that we need to be considering and trying to avoid. In the more long term, we want to look at the creation of more mixed income development. This is a picture of a neighborhood in Norfolk called Broad Creek. The idea here is that you have a combination of rental units and by right ownership, but you can't tell from the outside which is which. The idea is that people of all income groups can mix and live together so that you deconcentrate poverty, but you're still giving people who are using rental assistance a modern and enjoyable place to live. As an extension of this, there's a program that was started in Seattle and has been tried in a pilot program in North Carolina called Moving to Opportunity. What you'll see in this map here is that the orange circles represent existing subsidized housing units, and you can think of that essentially as public housing neighborhoods. And as you can see, they're mostly located in areas with low average incomes. And what we have found through pilot programs of this and other places is that if you can encourage people to move out of areas of severely low income, their children benefit immensely through increased income when they become adults and as they progress through adulthood. And the way that you do that is you have to provide a lot of education and a lot of support, because you're essentially encouraging people to move out of housing that they're used to in communities and neighborhoods where they have grown up or feel comfortable in, and moving them to somewhere that has a greater opportunity for their children. Some of that is, just almost like psychological counseling and encouraging them that it's going to be okay and they'll be able to get through it. But a lot of that is income assistance. It could be in terms of helping people to afford to move. It can be in terms of helping with first and last month's rent or any other upfront type costs. It could be helpful with rental insurance. Also, it can be helpful just in terms of people's legal rights. The General Assembly has passed legislation in the last session that makes it illegal for a landlord to deny a person's application strictly because they use housing vouchers. But people are used to using those housing vouchers in systems that are essentially just public housing, and we need to try to help move people out of public housing and into other, usually newer and nicer rental units in more income diverse neighborhoods. And finally, we want to be able to help create additional pathways for ownership for PRHA residents. PRHA does have existing programs to help people save, but it's more than just saving. Moving into a house that you own provides its own headaches and hardships that maybe if you've never owned a home before, you didn't necessarily anticipate. For example, being required to do all your own repairs now, as opposed to being able to hire, call your landlord and have the handyman come out and fix stuff for you. So finding additional ways that we can help support people by getting into their homes would be preferable, because we know that this is the easiest way for a person to generate wealth, and wealth that can be passed down to future generations. It's in the form of their house. So this is what we've tackled in the housing plan. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Brian, this is Peter Youngblood. Have you shown this to City Council? And if not, when do they get to see this?
We have not shown it to City Council yet. I will defer to Bob as to when and if we may be showing it to City Council.
Yeah, that's going to be ultimately a question for the city manager to decide when and if this gets presented in this format in the City Council. The report itself is available, and I believe we have it posted on our webpage. Has been out there. But once we got into the emergency status with the, Brian was talking about the date when the report was finalized, we were pretty much in the throes of the COVID-19 situation. And so a lot of our presentations to council we normally would have been having have not been occurring. And so I'm not sure, if there's a date established. That'll ultimately be the city manager's call.
Commissioners, are there any additional questions for Mr. Sway? There appears to be none. Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just for a point of clarity, the items that are reviewed today will be presented to City Council for action at their January the 12th or January the 26th, 2021 meeting. Our first public hearing item for today is UP-20-10 downtown. Lisa Murphy of Wilcox and Savage PC requests a use permit for a 5-story, 60-unit multifamily apartment building elevated upon 1-story parking structure at 700 Crawford Street. The property consists of 0.99 acres, and the proposed density is 60 dwelling units per acre. The property is zoned downtown D1 in the T6 subdistrict. The future land use map of the Build One Portsmouth comprehensive plan designates this property for mixed use downtown. The property is owned by the City of Portsmouth and is identified as Tax Map 7, Parcel 90. Our staff coordinator is Julie Chop. Will the staff coordinator for this application please come forward and present your application at this time?
Okay, hi, everybody. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners. The use permit application before you today involves the property at 700 Crawford Street. The applicant, on behalf of Breeden Investment Properties, requests a use permit for a 5-story multifamily development with a density of 60 units per acre. This project is the second phase of the existing Harbor Vista Apartments located at 800 Crawford Street. The current zoning ordinance requires a use permit for all multifamily dwellings. This will likely be the last multifamily use permit in the downtown district. In the proposed new zoning ordinance, multifamily use is permitted by right in the downtown D1, T4, T5, and T6 subdistricts. The property at 700 Crawford Street is bounded on 3 sides by Crawford, Columbia, and County Streets, and is in the downtown D1 district in the urban core T6 subdistrict. The lot is 0.99 acres and is currently vacant of structures. The property is within the AE8 flood zone and within the Chesapeake Bay protection area intensely developed area. The property is surrounded to the south across Columbia Street by Harbor Vista Phase 1, a 5-story, 134-unit L-shaped multifamily apartment development, which is also zoned D1 T6. To the east, on the opposite side of Crawford Street, is the City Jail and City Civic Center complex. A financial institution is to the west of 700 Crawford Street, and across County Street to the north of the subject property is a 3-story office building. Both of these office buildings are zoned D1 T6. The proposed project consists of an L-shaped 4-story, 60-unit multifamily apartment building elevated upon a 1-story parking structure for a total of 5 stories. The submitted conceptual site plan, shown here, displays vehicular access to the site along Columbia Street. Building entrances are shown on the corner of County and Crawford Street, on the western side of the County Street building facade, and adjacent to the surface parking on the rear facade of the building. The proposal includes 51 covered parking garage spaces and 41 surface parking spaces for a total of 92 spaces. The parking along Columbia Street is proposed to be screened with a 5-foot aluminum fence and landscaping that will match the fence at Harbor Vista Phase 1. The ground floor parking is proposed to be screened with mesh and CMU walls. The conceptual site plan designates approximately 4,350 square feet of open space along the eastern and western edge of the parcel, which will largely be used for required landscaping. Residents of Harbor Vista Phase 2 will have access to the existing fitness facility, rooftop deck, clubhouse, and leasing office located at Harbor Vista Phase 1. Harbor Vista Phase 2 has been designed to resemble the design and materials of Harbor Vista Phase 1 apartments. This slide shows the Crawford Street elevation facing the City Civic Complex and the County Street elevation facing the Wells Fargo office building. This slide shows the rear street elevation and the rear courtyard elevation facing the Navy Federal Credit Union building. Shown here are the Columbia Street elevation facing Harbor Vista Phase 1 and the Columbia Street courtyard elevation. The applicant is requesting approval of several deviations from the D1 zoning standards. Should the deviations be approved, the use permit conditions will require compliance with the applicant's project narrative. Section 40.1-9.4 requires that a building be built to the required building line, which is the property line abutting the public right-of-way. The applicant has requested a maximum setback of 17 feet from the RBL along Crawford Street. in order to line up the building facade with the existing building facade of Harbor Vista Phase 1 and also meet the intentions of the Crawford Gateway Plan. The applicant requests a setback of 7 feet from the RBL along Columbia Street, which is nearly consistent with the building setback of Harbor Vista Phase 1. The proposed setback on County Street is 7 feet from the RBL, which does not match that of Harbor Vista Phase 1. However, the applicant is proposing to set the building as far back as the building design allows along County Street. The requested deviations from the D1 zoning setback standard permit the development to be an adequate distance from the rights-of-way to allow suitable visibility. The D1 setbacks in the proposed new zoning ordinance have been modified to provide greater flexibility. The second requested modification pertains to the D1 zoning standard that requires all frontages for corner lots and through lots be built to the required building lines for at least 75% of the length. The applicant indicates in the project narrative that the County Street and Crawford Street facades meet this requirement. However, the Columbia Street facade is proposed to be built to the required building line for 30% of the RBL length. The applicant is requesting to deviate from the 75% building length requirement for the Columbia Street facade to allow space for surface parking. This request is similar to that of the Harbor Vista Phase 1 Columbia Street building facade, which also received a modification of the 75% frontage length requirement to allow for parking. The D1 zoning standards require that parking be located behind the parking setback line 30 feet from the RBL. The applicant is requesting parking setbacks of approximately 8 inches behind the RBL on County, Crawford, and Columbia Streets. This requested deviation allows the applicant additional space for surface parking. The 30-foot parking setback required in the downtown is not an appropriate standard for this urban environment and has been removed in the proposed new zoning ordinance. Along any RBL frontage that is not occupied by a building, the D1 zoning standards require a street wall that is between 5 and 12 feet high to be located at least 8 inches behind the RBL. In place of a street wall, the applicant is requesting to substitute a 5-foot aluminum fence supplemented with shrubs and plantings along Columbia Street where there is no building facade. The fence and landscaping were approved as a substitute to the street wall at Harbor Vista Phase 1 along Columbia Street and will provide for a more aesthetic downtown appearance, as shown in the picture on the slide. The fifth requested modification relates to the D1 zoning standard that requires residential uses to be comprised of windows for 30% of the building facade between 2 and 8 feet in height along the street frontage. The applicant is requesting a modification that removes the ground floor facade window percentage requirement. The ground floor of the proposed apartment building at 700 Crawford Street is within the floodplain, which prevents its use for any residential function. Therefore, the applicant has proposed the ground floor for parking, as is the use of the ground floor of the existing Harbor Vista Phase 1. The applicant has proposed the use of mesh and CMU walls to screen the use and provide the appearance of windows. And on this slide are also pictures showing you the appearance of windows with the mesh and CMU walls. The final requested modification relates to the D1 zoning standard that states that at least one functioning entry door is required along each ground story facade at intervals less than 100 feet in this section of downtown. The conceptual site plan shows entry doors on the corner of Crawford and County Street, on the rear building facade, and on the western County Street facade. The County Street facade meets this D1 zoning standard. However, the Columbia Street and Crawford Street and rear facades are not compliant. The applicant has indicated that since the ground floor is being used for parking, the zoning standard for providing additional street entry doors on the remaining building facades would not be necessary. The requested deviations allow the development to mirror Harbor Vista Phase 1 to ensure Phase 1 and Phase 2 appear to be parts of the same development, as well as ensure compliance with the floodplain regulations. The future land use map of the comprehensive plan designates 700 Crawford Street as mixed use downtown. The proposed multifamily use aligns with this designation. In conclusion, the proposal with the recommended conditions complies with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan and provides quality modern housing for Portsmouth residents. Staff recommends approval of UP-20-10 with the conditions listed in the staff report and recommends approval of the requested modifications of the D1 zoning standards. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to stand by for any and all questions.
Commissioners, I will call each of your names to allow you the opportunity to, if you have any questions or comments for Ms. Chop. I have none. Commissioner Youngblood.
I have none.
Commissioner Thaxton.
I have none.
Commissioner Coleman.
I have none at this time.
Commissioner Page.
I have no questions.
Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the public hearing on item UP-20-10. Citizens will be called upon to provide comments or questions and are asked to verbally identify yourself prior to making comments and to mute your microphones when you are not speaking. Will the applicant for UP-20-10 come forward to provide any additional information or comments? State your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. This is Lisa Murphy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Williams, members of the Planning Commission, members of staff. For the record, my name is Lisa Murphy. I'm a local attorney, and I'm here today on behalf of the applicant, Breeden Investment Properties. And I have to say, I'm kind of glad we came after Brian Sweat's discussion about how important it is to get additional housing downtown. And I think my client would echo and be in support of the of doing away with the conditional use permit requirement, so that this their process would have been a little bit easier and occur a little bit more quickly. But we do think that would be the way to go in the future, to do away with the use permit requirement. In any event, I've got with me today Brian Revere, who's the president of Breeden Construction, Ken Owen, the director of development for Breeden Construction, Mitch Bowser, who is with Timmons Group, the project engineer, and then Kelly Osborne and Yao Yu with Humphreys and Partners, who are the project architects. And so if you've got a question and I can't answer it, one of the other folks on the call should be able to. I would like to thank Julie. She did an excellent job and really, frankly, gave what would have been my presentation. So I just wanted to hit on some of the high points. I mean, first and foremost, this is a good news story for the city. Harbor Vista Apartments is 134 units, and it's been very successful. So much so that Breeden Investment Properties is back, and they're ready to expand across Columbia Street into this new property, into phase 2 with 60 additional units. As Julie indicated, the proposed development takes what's currently a vacant lot that's owned by the city and develops it into a second phase of a high-end multifamily project. It'll look very much, as Julie said, like the existing Harbor Vista Apartments. It'll be an L facing the other way, with the long side on Columbia and County Streets. The additional 60 well-appointed units will have upscale modern finishes, and they, as Julie said, it will share the folks in Harbor Vista 2 will share the nice amenities that are currently provided in Harbor Vista 1. The project also, in addition to satisfying the need for new options in the city and in the downtown area. It also had as the added benefit of taking property that's currently not on the tax rolls and putting it to productive taxable use. And I think everybody would agree that that's an additional benefit for the city. Harbor Vista 2 represents an additional $12 million investment in downtown Portsmouth by the applicant. And it's anticipated that the market rents will range from $1,150 to $1,800 a month. The project itself, during the various phases of construction, will lead to as many as 85 new jobs. As Julie said, and she went through each of these in a lot of detail, but we're seeking similar deviations from the D1 downtown district zoning requirements as were requested for Harbor Vista 1. Harbor Vista 1 went through a slightly different process in that the deviations from the D1 district zoning requirements actually took place during something called a phase 2 site plan review. As some of you may know, that's no longer part of the ordinance. It was deemed to be unconstitutional. So that process has now been rolled into this use permit process, which is why you're seeing some more technical requests than maybe you've seen before. So again, we've tried to the extent possible to really have this building mirror the existing building. We're very close with the setback on Crawford Street. And as the staff report indicates, where you see up to 17% and then up to 7% for the setback on County Street and Columbia Street, that's because the building is squared off, but the property is not. So you've got a variation, from one end of the street to the other end of the street as far as the distance from the building to the property line. So the setbacks, Columbia Street will be similar to the existing. Crawford Street will be similar. County Street, we've done the best that we can given the shape of the building and needing to keep.
That's 5 minutes.
I'm sorry. Well, I thank you for your time. We're happy to answer questions. We think this is a great project. We're all very excited about it. And it does help increase economic activity and fuel employment opportunities and really help expand the city's economic base. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we hope that you'll recommend approval of this project. Thank you.
Commissioners, I will call each of your names to see if you have any questions or comments for Ms. Murphy or any of her colleagues. I have none. Commissioner Youngblood.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Murphy, I think this is a great project, and I applaud you for being involved in it. Just for information, what's the approximate occupancy rate for phase 1 right now?
I'm going to defer to Ken Owen on that, but my understanding is it's just about fully occupied.
Lisa, Mr. Youngblood, it's currently 99%.
Great, that's wonderful news, and it dovetails in with the citywide housing report that Brian presented earlier. One of the stats that I saw when I read that was that the downtown area can support an additional 860 housing units. So this is a nice step in the right direction, and I hope we see you back here with lots more projects. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback, and we plan to be back in with more projects. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Thaxton.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Coleman.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Page.
No questions.
Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-20-10. I have no registered speakers. If there is someone on the call who would like to address this application, you may do so at this time. Please press *6 to unmute your mic, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Commissioners, is there any further discussion? If not, we are in need of a motion and a second for UP-20-10 with conditions.
This is Sherry Thaxton. I'd like to make a motion to approve UP-20-10 with conditions.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Page. I second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second to approve UP-20-10. As I call your name, please reply with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood,
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Page.
Yes.
This item is approved 5-0 with conditions. Our next item is new business. We have the nominations and election of officers for the 2021 year. We will be voting on our chairman for the 2021 and our vice chairman. We'll start first with our vice chairman. We are in need of a nomination for the vice chairman of the Planning Commission for the year 2021.
This is Sherry Thaxton. I'd like to make a motion to nominate Peter Youngblood for vice chair.
Okay. Are there any more nominations? Okay. Appearing to be none, we will vote on the vice chairman for the 2021 Planning Commission. And Mr. Chairman, would you like to continue? Okay.
Regina, I think you need to go ahead and complete the vote on the vice chair at this point.
Okay. The vice chair, we need a vote for that want Peter Youngblood as the vice chairman for the Planning Commission. And as I call your name, you can take a vote. Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood,
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Page.
Yes.
Okay, the vote is a 5-0 for the new vice chairman of the Planning Commission for the year 2021 is Peter Youngblood. I now need nominations for our chairman for the Planning Commission. Do we have any nominations?
This is Sherry Thaxton. I'd like to make a motion to nominate Albert Williams as chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any additional nominations? Appearing to be none, we will now take a vote on the chairman for the 2021 Planning Commission. And as I call your name, please respond with a verbal response. Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood,
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Page.
Yes.
Our new chairman or continuing chairman is Mr. Albert Williams for the chairman for the Planning Commission for the year 2021. Thank you, commissioners. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the 2021 Planning Commission calendar. I just need a motion to approve that calendar for the 2021 year.
This is Peter Youngblood. I make a motion that we approve the calendar for the 2021 year as presented.
Okay,
This is Commissioner Williams. I second.
thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the 2021 Planning Commission calendar. As I call your name, would you reply with a verbal response? Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Youngblood,
Yes.
Commissioner Thaxton,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner.
Yes.
The Approval of the 2021 Planning Commission calendar is approved by a vote of 5-0.
Madam Secretary, I believe that concludes our agenda for today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, at this time, I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to wish everyone a great holiday season, whether that be Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, and I hope things are truly blessed for all of you. Commissioners, any other further business we need to discuss? Mr. Baldwin, is there any other further business?
No, sir. I would just echo your comments on wishing everyone a safe and happy holiday season as we move through the rest of this year. And we look forward to working with you as we get into 2021.
Well, we look forward to working with you and the staff there too, Mr. Baldwin. Y'all have done a phenomenal job, and we greatly appreciate everything you do every day.
Well, thank
Hearing
you so
none,
much.
this meeting
Let
is now.
me just say, Mr. Chairman, if I might just interrupt for 1 second. I'd like to
Sure.
echo that again back for the Planning Commission. We had quite a year this year. I think all things considered are rolling from in-person meetings to virtual meetings and getting through all of the business we got through, including rewriting the zoning ordinance and the D2 zoning. That is truly a tremendous amount of work for the Planning Commission this year. We are very appreciative of all your support and attention as we went through that process. And again, quite a year. Hopefully next year we won't be quite so busy rewriting things and be busier dealing with more actual land use applications.
Thank you so much. There being no further business, this meeting is now adjourned.